Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the webinar this afternoon. My name is Mark Watson. I'm the Country Managing Partner for ERM Korea, and on behalf of ERM, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar on KREACH this afternoon. We have quite a full schedule. We'd like to make this as engaging, as interactive as possible. So some guidelines. We'd certainly encourage you to ask any questions by typing them into the Q&A function, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. Just so that everybody knows, we are actually recording this presentation this afternoon, and the material will be shared with all the participants who have attended following the session. We have enabled the English transcript feature, so simply just click the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen, and we'd encourage you to follow up with a quick survey following the webinar to help us to gain some feedback, but also to pose any additional questions that you might have. Next slide. There'll be three presenters this afternoon, myself facilitating. Then we'll have Ms. Joyce Chen, who's a subject matter expert in our product stewardship team based in Shanghai, and Dr. Miyun Kwon, who leads our product stewardship team here in South Korea. Next slide. I'll just give a very brief introduction to ERM to familiarise those who are not familiar with us, or to reintroduce us to those of you who are. We'll then have Joyce provide an overview and an update on KREACH. Miyun will run through some case studies, and we'll have a session at the end to answer any questions that you might have before wrapping up with a quick summary. Next slide. And so ERM is the world's leading environment and sustainability consultancy. We've been in operation for over 50 years, have 160 offices in between 40 countries, and well over 5,500 professional staff. Thanks. We're very proud of our presence and operations here in the Asia Pacific region. 32 offices and more than 60 professional product stewardship and regulatory affairs professionals based all across the region. So wherever help is needed, ERM is there. Next slide, thanks. In regard to product stewardship, I guess, working with our clients over a number of years, there's a number of common themes that have come through. Firstly, that as operators in the business, it's recognised that the supply chain is complicated, not just in terms of the variability of the materials that we deal with, but the business models and the regulations, therefore, across all the different geographies that need to be dealt with. It's not just the different geographies and the regulations, but there's cultural and language issues that mean the movement of chemicals and the management of our supply chain is really complicated. And obviously, the implications for not getting it right are quite significant with penalties imposed. So, next slide, thanks. Our ERM team provides service across the supply chain through the product stewardship life cycle, through classification and labelling of chemicals and safety data sheets, supports our clients with manage their wastes, both hazardous and non-hazardous, whether that be prohibitions and other restrictions. We undertake due diligence right across the supply chain, help our clients with packaging and labelling issues, and I guess, the more holistic chemicals management compliance, and of course the registration in accordance with the requirements in the jurisdictions that our clients operate. Next slide, thanks. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to our first technical speakers, Ms. Joyce Chen. Over to you, Joyce.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. This is Joyce Chen from, previous slide. Hello, everyone. This is Joyce Chen from Miyun China. I'm glad to have this opportunity to introduce KREACH regulation and share the update to you. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My background is chemical registrations and product stewardship in APAC region. I have more than 9 years experience in chemical regulation and joined the EM last year. I'm familiar with REACH-like regulations in APAC region and supported clients in several aspects like regulatory obligation confirmation, data gap analysis, testing monitoring, and dosage preparation. Over past years, I have directed, managed, and delivered hundreds of chemical registration projects in China, Taiwan, and South Korea. So let's get started for my topic today. Next page, please. Okay, firstly, let's take a look at the regulation framework. The full name of KREACH is the Act on Registration and Evaluation of Chemical Substances. Since it's more like EU-REACH on chemicals management, so generally we call it KREACH. It came into force on January 1st of 2015 and revised on January 1st of 2019. The competent authority of this regulation is Ministry of Environment, MOE, who is responsible for regulation drafting, enforcement, and update. And under MOE, there are several agencies like NIA and KICO, who are in charge of registration dossier review, depends on different registration types. And the management scope within KREACH include the new chemical substance, also known as non-phase-in substance, and existing chemical substance, also called phase-in substance, and the product containing substances subjected to intensive control. And they will have different obligations under KREACH, and I will explain it in detail later. Next page, please. So now we have understand the regulatory framework. Let's take a look at the qualified registrant under KREACH, who should register under KREACH regulation. Here we can see a simple supply chain. There are two parts. Above the dotted line represents outside of Korea, and below the dotted line represents within Korea. And there is a manufacturer A, which is in green color, outside Korea, who sells the raw material to formulator B, and then B mix the raw material with additives and solvents into a final product, and then sell them to distributor C, and then C export the product to Korean importers. And within this supply chain, KREACH registration could be performed by other overseas suppliers or local importers. And if it is performed by overseas suppliers, they need to appoint only representative within Korea to apply for registration on behalf of themselves, similar to EU-REACH. And according to Article 38 of KREACH regulation, only manufacturer and the producer could appoint only representative for KREACH. So in this picture, manufacturer A or formulator B could appoint only representative, while the distributor C couldn't. And next page, please. There are some exemptions under KREACH. We could simply categorize them into two types. One is substances of lower risk. Like the first one, a chemical substance imported as embedded into the machine. And the second one, a chemical substance imported together with machine or equipment used for test run. And another type is substance subject to other regulations or laws, such as radioactive substances, pharmaceuticals, narcotics, cosmetics, and raw materials for cosmetics. If your products belong to these two types, you are directly exempted for KREACH, and you should identify your obligation by yourself and retain the documents for follow-up inspection. Next slide, please. And there is another type which you could apply for, which you should apply for confirmation of exemption. The application is performed through online IT system, including a chemical manufactured or imported to be wholly exported, a chemical for scientific experiment, analysis or research, such as reagents, a chemical for R&D purposes, polymer of low concern, a substance which surface has been treated, and a non-isolated intermediate. And the regulator will review your application. Only after their approval, your registration application could be exempted. Please note that the first one, a chemical manufactured or imported to be wholly exported is performed annually. And for other types, you only need to apply on the first time of your manufacture or importing. Next page, please. So we've already know that both new and existing chemicals should be registered under KREACH, but how to identify new and existing chemical substances? Here is a National Chemical Information System, NCRS, for your reference. It's an online website through which you could search by case number, and if it is listed, it's an existing chemical substance. Otherwise, it's a new one. And also, in this system, you could know several substance lists announced by Korea regulator, like in this picture, the hazardous chemical substances, substances subjected to intensive control, CMR substances, and the substances requiring preparation for accidents. Next slide, please. And this slide summarized your obligation under KREACH. As I've mentioned above, there are 3 types of substances subject to KREACH regulation, including existing substance, new substance, and the product containing substances subject to intensive control, which is in light blue in this picture. So for existing chemical substances, which are not PECs, if your volume is greater than 1 ton per year, you should apply for pre-registration. Then you could be granted grace period for registration. And for 510 PECs, there is no grace period now. You should apply for registration before you put your product into Korean market. And for new chemical substance, depending on the volume, there are 2 different obligations. If your volume is more than 0.1 ton per year, you should perform registration. Otherwise, notification of your substance will be enough. And for products containing substances subjected to intensive control, there are 2 conditions, which is the total quantity of the mentioned substance is greater than 1 ton per year, and they existed in your product for more than 0.1%. If both of the conditions are met, you should perform product notification for your product. And after registration, MOE will review the data which you submitted and conduct a hazard and risk assessment with their expert panel, and designate the toxic substance and the substance is subjected to authorization, restriction, and prohibition. Next slide, please. Okay, next, let's take a look at pre-registration of existing chemical substance. Firstly, what is pre-registration? Companies manufacturing or importing existing chemical substances over 1 ton per year should apply for pre-registration before their formal registration. And the reason why they apply for pre-registration is to obtain grace period of the following formal registration. And after pre-registration, we could know peer companies and work together for future joint registration. The information which are required in pre-registration is more complex comparing to KREACH, which are substance identifying information such as chemical name, test number, and estimated quantity, and GHS classification and labeling and use information, and the registrant information like the company name, address, contact information. And in case of appointing OR, that means if you are an overseas enterprise and you perform the registration by appointing OR, you also need to submit a POA. And in case of importing, the importers list is also necessary. Next page, please. So after pre-registration, companies could be granted a grace period to fulfill the formal registration. Depends on their tonnage band. For substance with volume is more than 1,000 tons and the CMR substances, the deadline is the end of last year, December 31 of 2021. And for substances with volume is 100 to 1,000 tons per year, the registration deadline is December 31 of 2024. So now we should work for the substance in this tonnage range. And the substances with quantity of 10 to 100 and 1 to 10 tons per year should finish their registration before the end of 2027 and 2030, respectively. Next slide, please. KREACH requires mandatory joint registration. And after pre-registration, you could join in SICO and get to know other companies registered the same substance with you. The next step is LR election. If there are several companies in SICO who intend to be LRs, then all members must vote to generate LR. And after LR is determined, LR shall investigate the registration intention among SICO members. AM is an active member who will assist LR in data collection and share the registration cost in early stages. And in addition to AM, the rest member would be PM, a passive member. Next, LR will lead the work, including data gap analysis, data collection, use confirmation, and dossier preparation. And after the dossier is completed, LR will submit first. And after LR dossier is approved, he should share his dossier and data to other members. And it would be a very complex process which involves lots of legal, financial, communication, and technical work. And finally, he will help all the members within SICO to complete their own registration. Next slide, please. So for new chemical substances, there is no SICO and no co-registrants. So each company should perform their individual registration. There are 3 conditions for new chemical substance. If a new chemical substance is less than 0.1 ton per year, notification would be enough, which only requires company information, substance identification information, uses and exposure, and no data is required for this kind of obligation. And if the tonnage is between 0.1 to 1 ton per year, registration with 9 endpoints should be submitted. And if the quantity is more than 1 ton per year, registration should be performed with 15 to 37 to 47 endpoints depending on tonnage bands. And next slide, please. And here is the information required in for registration. Generally, for both existing and new chemical substance, we should submit these 8 items, including registrant information, chemical substance information, chemical substance uses, classification, labeling, physical chemical property, toxicological and ecotoxicological properties, guidance on safe use. And for the risk assessment, similar to KREACH, it is generally required for registration of tonnage is more than 10 tons per year. And in some conditions, if the regulator thinks the substance of excessive hazard, and you also be required to submit risk assessment to prove that your manufacture or use of this substance is safe in Korea. Next page, please. And this table illustrates the data requirements of a general substance in 4 registration tonnage bands. For example, for tonnage bands of 10 to 100 tons per year, which I've circled as red box here, you should submit 11 endpoints in physiochemical properties, 10 endpoints in toxicology, and 5 endpoints in ecotoxicology. Next slide, please. And for polymers, please pay attention that under KREACH, polymer itself is subjected to registration instead of monomers. That is difference between KREACH. The data requirement of polymer is relatively lower comparing to general substance. Take a polymer of 100 to 1,000 tons per year. For example, the data requirement in toxicological, ecotoxicological properties is equal to general substance of 1 to 10 tons per year. So, however, polymers should submit its own characteristic property data, including monomer information, GBC report, residue monomers, and stability test. Next, please. And to reduce the burden of industry on data collection, Korea regulator proposed a strategy to simplify registration dossier. If a substance is not classified, even if it is more than 1,000 tons per year, only 15 endpoints is required. And if the substance is classified as less hazardous, up to 33 endpoints are required to submit. Next slide, please. So we could identify hazard of substance according to this table, which is high hazard or which is low hazard or non-classified. High hazard means to the hazard classification in this first column. For example, acute toxicity category 1 or 2 or 3. If a substance falls into any of the classification in this column, it may not enjoy the benefits of data reduction. And if a substance only has the classification in second column, it could submit up to 33 endpoints. And similarly, if a substance is only classified as chronic hazard in aquatic environment, category 3 or 4, or even non-classified, 15 endpoints could be submitted at most. Next slide, please. And after the latest amendment, MOE announced several notices to improve the management of KREACH regulation. One is number 2021-97, which extended existing substance scope. According to this notice, hydrates or anhydrates of existing substances are all regarded as existing substance. and a reaction product consisting 2 or more components. If each of the components is an existing substance, then the whole reaction product is regarded as existing substance. And the third one, if an existing substance contains 2 or more configurations, then each specific configuration is considered as existing chemical substance. Next slide, please. Another notice is called number 2021-421. Previously, as I mentioned above, Polymers enjoys data reduction in registration, but now authority furtherly lowered the requirement on CSR, the risk assessment report. For Polymers, CSR is needed only for tonnage bands more than 1,000 tons per year, which makes polymer registration easier than before. Next page, please. Okay, that's all for my session. Thank you very much. And next, my colleague Miyun will share some case studies and lessons we learned from last round of registration. Hi, Miyun, it's your turn.
Thank you, Joyce. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Miyun Kwon, and I'm a partner at ERM based in Seoul. And I am a leading product stewardship team here in Korea, and we provide the services related to the chemical regulation in Korea, such as KREACH, KBPR, GHS, SDS, and so on. And I have been working on this regulatory field more than 10 years, including chemical and also product regulations and registrations. And I'm very happy to be here as a panelist on this webinar. And as Joyce told you before, we are in the middle of registering existing chemicals in Korea. And end of last year, the highest tonnage band is over 1,000 ton registration was completed. And at that time, timeline was somehow very tight, and we experienced some issues and the challenges. And then now I'm going to share our experience with you. Next, please. Okay, so the first one, as you might know that Korea, the joint registration is mandatory. So for every single substance, SICO has been formed for each chemicals. And in this, within this SICO, as you know that there are some members like active member, passive member, and there might be a read registrant. And the members have very different tonnage band, and there might be a late registrant. So there are a lot of complexity in SICO members, and also that involves lots of legal and financial work. So one example is that the lead registrant have to check all SICO members' registration plans. So within the SICO, there is system, IT system, and if you want to register as a lead registrant, you have to approve all other team, all our other SICO members. So that was an issue in the beginning of the registration. So if you are the lead registrant, you have to communicate with the all SICO members, even though the SICO members, they are the passive or they are the very lower tonnage band, you have to communicate in advance. So that is that was very hard job. And even though the registration was completed last year, the cost calculation is still ongoing. So what that means is that if you completed your registration over 1,000 ton last year, but there might be another members like a passive member 100 to 1,000, and some registrant need to register lately, so they they were not SECO members and they want to register lately, they have to pay this cost, LOA cost, but the cost calculation is not completed yet. So currently the issue is that the late registrant should register with the agreement and the confirmation letter and the very rough cost estimation. So there are a lot of complexities in SECO. So the point is that if you are the late registrant, you have to be very careful about your timeline because it will take some time to make some cost calculation. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a good thing that this is about the dossier preparation. So in the past, Korean authority accepted a very general standard guideline test report and the test summary. But currently they are accepting more flexible data like a QSAR or read across or some theoretical data publications and so on. That is because of the EU REACH experience. So if you have any good justification, solid justification and makes very good explanation about your data, you can apply for that data as your dossier, and then you can communicate with the authority to accept this data. So as you can see here, that is on our enforcement degree, and you can see the like a QSAR data is accepted for the less than 1 tonnage banded substance, and you can see the number 4, the internationally recognized in vitro testing method is also possible, and the number 5, the result obtained from a chemical substance with similar structure or similar physical and chemical properties. That is the read across data. And the number 6, the internationally recognized testing method, and the number 6-2, published by a foreign government or an international organization. And the number 7, if you can make some evidence that this substance is not technically possible to do some test, you can also make justification. Next, please. Okay, so yeah, I haven't included the detailed information here, but I just make some examples. Like we have this UVCB substance that is the petroleum based. So this is very mixture of several chemicals, and we try to submit the QSAR data for the biodegradation and the read across data for the some tox data, and the sameness check for the some different structure evidence. So in this case, we submit the tox data as a read across as a reference chemicals. We made a very good justification with the physical chemical properties like solubility, boiling point, partition coefficients, and so on. And also we submitted the QSAR data as a biodegradation. We explain the poor solubility of these petroleum-based substances. So the point here is that if you have experience in the EU REACH registration, you can take advantage of it. So you can make some good justification, then include in your dossier, and then submit as a registration dossier. Next, please. Okay. Yes. Some of you may know that the Korean authority have some program to support small and medium-sized companies. So that is very official support program from Korean government. And that project is to support the cost for the test data or CSR or even the consulting fee. And so far, the more than 300 substances have been supported from the government. And overseas manufacturer and or are not in scope. So yeah, most of this audience will not be in scope of this project. But yeah, local small and medium-sized enterprise, they got very good support from the authority. And Korean authority encouraged to earlier registration than by the end of grace period. So as you can see in the picture, yeah, you can see the small, medium-sized enterprise as yeah, usually they have very small tonnage band, like 1 to 10 ton, but there might be some different tonnage band member, like a passive member with 100 to 1,000 ton or 10 to 100 ton. But they are the passive member. They don't know what happened in this CICO. And some small company take the lead on this CICO and get some support from the government. And then government support the test data and testing data and the CSR. So if the this passive member has the data, their own data, so if this passive member is a data owner, they cannot use their data in the end because they got the support, lead registrant got support from the authority, and you have to pay for the lead registrant. So that is an yeah, issue. So if you are the data owner and you have highest tonnage band, you have to be careful within the CICO, and yeah, you need to be check the what is the process in the CICO, and if there is any possibility to get some support from the authority, you have to think about it. So that's another study. Okay, next, please. Okay, so now the lessons learned. So you have to be prepared with your experience in KREACH and other global regulations. As I told you before, that the Korean authority now accepts the more and more internationally available data, so you can yeah, make some advantage of it. And plan earlier. Authority request for the supplementation takes time. So they request the supplement the data, and sometimes they request other things. So that takes some time. So you have to plan earlier to your registration. So now the 100 to 1,000 ton registration, the grace period is by the end of 2024, but you have to be prepared, and I recommend you to plan earlier to do your registration. And if you are a data owner, early involvement is advantages. So there might be some government support program or other lead registrant do something differently. So if you're a data owner and if you wanna use that data, early involvement is advantageous. Like yeah, it is good if you participate as an active member. And if you're a late registrant, you're not in the CICO right now, you have to be patient with the CICO feedback because the cost calculation is very complex. So even though the registration completed last year, they are still doing the cost calculation for the over 1,000 tons. So you have to be patient with the feedback. So that's all I have. So next, please.
Thank you, Miyun. Thank you very much, Joyce, as well for your summaries and overviews. Very, very clear, actually. However, we do have a number of questions already in the Q&A box, so we might run through those if everyone can bear with us. Miyun, perhaps I might direct the first one to yourself. And the question is, does a Korean importer have the obligation to transfer the risk information sheet, that is form number 26, to its customers if they receive it from its OR? And a follow-up question, if they do, can they mask the OR's name in the form?
Yes, so yeah, you have to transfer the form number 26 for the yeah, when you deliver or transfer for your chemicals or product. But in the form number 26, there is you have to fill the information about the transfer. So that means that usually the form number 26 is prepared by the importer or manufacturer, not OR. So if you want, you can just yeah, use your name like importer or manufacturer, not OR. So you can do that.
Thanks, Miyun. Second question, I might direct to yourself, Joyce. Can you reconfirm what is the timeline window given for this second batch of registration?
Okay, sure. As I mentioned during the presentation, the deadline for the second batch of substance is the end of 2024, which means we still have 2.5 years to prepare for registration. And you may think that 2.5 years is a long period. However, according to our experience, generally it would take more than 1 year or more for LR to finish his registration. So if you intend to be LR, please take action as soon as possible. And if your role is passive member, please keep contact with LR and register once LR's dose is approved in case missing the deadline. Yeah.
Thanks, Joyce. Miyun, perhaps a more general and quite a tough question, might direct to yourself regarding the business impact. So, what do you see as the business impact of this this new round of registrations?
So as you know, the registration is the requirement to do your sales in Korea. So if you can miss the timeline, you have to lose your business here. So that might be the business impact, and there might be an unexpected issues around the registration period. So you have to prepare earlier. That's better, I think, and that should minimize your business impact and your sales.
Great, thanks, Mia. Great answer. Actually, there's a couple of quite simple questions that even I might take now. First question, can we have the slides, please? Yes, just to reconfirm, we will circulate all the slides, the slide deck to the attendees. So more than happy and more than welcome to do that. And does ERM have a legal entity in Seoul? Yes, we do. So ERM Korea is a legal entity. So
yes, also. Yeah, but I I have to add one more thing. So we also have a legal entity, and also we do provide the service as a OR. So if you have any questions around it, yeah, just contact us. So yeah, we can also provide not only KREACH, we do the KBPR service also. So.
Next question. Annex 25 is substance and entity specific. For a mixture, there'll be lots of Annex 25. Do you have an example to share of how you can make it simpler? Who wants to take that one, Miyun?
Miyun, do you have any idea about that?
Annex 25, I think that is for the information transfer to the downstream users, right?
Perhaps we can take that one on board and get back to you in terms of how we can simplify the process. Obviously, new processes, new registrations potentially are quite cumbersome. So looking for opportunities to streamline is always a good thing. Joyce, a question for you regarding pesticides. So are pesticides co-formulants, that is the non-active ingredients, exempted from the registration requirements under KREACH?
Well, I'm afraid not. As far as I know, only the active ingredients should be registered under KBPR. Thus, the active ingredients exempted from KREACH registration, while for other non-active ingredients, I think they should still be registered under KREACH. Yeah.
Another question, is there any success examples of registration and notification with the EU EC number? Are you aware of any success examples?
I think if we register chemicals under KREACH, we needed to use test number and the key number, right, Miyun? I'm not sure if we can only use EU EC number. I don't think so, right?
So yeah, currently we do the existing chemical registration with the KE number. But if you are thinking about the new chemicals, yeah, maybe we can try. So there are lots of new chemicals that doesn't have CAS number. So if you have if you are considering the new chemicals, EU EC number might be considerable, I think.
Joyce, you did touch on polymers during your presentation, but we might ask you perhaps to reiterate a couple of points there. And how does KREACH handle registrations for polymers, as polymers are often mixtures of the base resin plus additives?
Well, it depends on whether the additives are combined in polymer chain. If they are, I think we could regard them as one part of polymer, and we should register the whole polymer according to KREACH regulation. And otherwise, if the additives do not connect it to polymer chain, and they are together with polymer to make a mixture, I think both polymer and additives should be registered separately according to their tonnage band. Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps, Miyun, a question for yourself on timing. If we import indirectly the chemical which should be registered before December 2024 with a vendor located in Korea, does my company need to comply with KREACH, or just the vendor needs to comply with it? That's a good question.
Okay. Yes, the registration obligation is to the importer in Korea. So if your company imported from the overseas manufacturers, you have to register it. But if you just purchase or buy from the local vendor in Korea, you don't have to do that. So if the in that case the vendor is an importer, and the vendor should register the chemical. So importer means who pay for the customs clearance tax. So that's the importer.
But I think they should maybe buy the registered chemicals. Otherwise, they may offend the law. Yeah.
Joyce, perhaps a question for yourself about becoming an LR. So if our substance is the highest volume, will I be the LR automatically?
It depends, because if you would like to be LR, firstly, you need to hands up within SQL. And meanwhile, if there are several companies who has the intention to be LR, then all members must vote to determine the LR. So it depends, not if you have the highest volume, then you could be LR. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Further questions. Okay, so Miyun, perhaps a question for you regarding mixtures. How should you communicate through the supply chain regarding mixtures containing registered substances?
Yes, we have obligation to transfer the information to the downstream users about the registration or chemical hazard and so on. So, but it will be dependent on the chemical's nature. So if there is the hazard chemicals, you have to disclose all the chemical substance and the concentration. But if there's no hazard chemicals in there, you can just use the number 25 form, or if your chemical is just right now in the grace period, you can just deliver the MSDS with certain notification numbers. So it will be highly dependent on your formulation and the chemicals.
Yeah. And one, I'm not entirely clear, so we might break the question down into a series of parts. Is there a gap between the current KREACH and global product stewardship standards? So is there a big difference between KREACH and what's expected elsewhere?
Well, well, the KREACH is very similar to EU REACH, and but there are some differences between KREACH and the EU REACH too. So like polymer registration, that is very special in KREACH, and other reasons like Taiwan REACH, they just started the standard registration, but they joint registration is not mandatory in Taiwan. So the situation are a little bit different. So the scientific evidence, test report data is very similar in internationally, globally. But how to do that, the process-wise, every country has different process. So yeah, I would say that is the difference.
Yeah, but I think if a company perform the maybe testing in domestic Korea GLP laboratories, the test report can be used for global registration. Yeah, that is a good point, and you can save your cost maybe by arranging your test in Korea for KREACH, but you can also use it for maybe for China registration or Taiwan registration. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now a question about choice between annexes. So for downstream communications of registered hazardous substances, which is better, Annex 25 or Annex 26?
Oh, sorry, Miyun, do you have any idea on that? For the Annex,
yes,
form?
so yeah, Annex 25 is the chemicals that is not if they don't have MSDS, you can use the Annex 25, and the Annex 26, if the chemical has MSDS, you can use the Annex 26 with MSDS. So I would recommend that if you have MSDS or not, you can choose Annex 25 or 26.
That is all of the questions that we currently have. I will just do a double check, and we will make sure that we reply as well. There's a few comments that nobody actually wants to be the LR. And so just to confirm a couple other points, yes, we will send out the PowerPoint to everybody who has attended. So at that point, perhaps we might take the next slide. Thanks. Actually, before you do, sorry, I beg your pardon. Before we do, you will see on the screen the QR code. Please scan that. That will direct you to the survey, which provides you with an opportunity to provide some feedback on today's session, which we would really appreciate, as we can then improve these webinars for our clients and for the industry going forward. It'll also give you an opportunity to pose any additional questions, and we will work through all of those and make sure that there are responses to each. Next slide, thanks. So in wrapping up, firstly, thank you, Miyun and Joyce, for your contributions today. And I think hopefully that's very helpful to the audience in terms of understanding the process, what's exempted, what isn't, what the timelines are, how you go through things, and also some of the important lessons learnt from the first round that Miyun has shared, that hopefully makes the process smoother for us and for industry going forward. We have a series of additional webinars coming up next month that we're conducting in association with Chemical Watch. We co-organised in Taiwan, China and Korea, as you can see on screen, starting from the middle of June. So if you're interested, please attend those, please register for those. You will get a series of a copy of these slides, so you can click on that link to find out more details about those sessions and to make a registration. Next, thanks. So in closing, I'd just like to thank everybody for your attendance and interest today. If we missed any questions, we will get back to you. You will have our email addresses here on screen, and also you'll get them when you receive the presentations. If there are any follow-up questions regarding the content of today, or any other additional support you might need, complying with KREACH, and then we would be obviously more than happy to assist going forward. Miyun, Joyce, any final comments? If not, we can close up for the day, finishing